Section 3 of Confessions, volumes 5 and 6. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. Confessions, volumes 5 and 6, by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, anonymously translated. Section 3. Behold me then, so full of this concert, that night or day I could think of nothing else, and it actually employed a great part of my time to select the music, assemble the musicians, look to the instruments, and write out the several parts. Madame de Warrens sang. Father Caton, whom I have before mentioned and shall have occasion to speak of again, sang likewise. A dancing master named Roche and his son played on the violin. Canavat, a Piedmontese musician, who was employed like myself in the survey and has since married at Paris, played on the violoncello. The Abbé Palais performed on the harpsichord, and I had the honor to conduct the whole. It may be supposed all this was charming. I cannot say it equaled my concert at Monsieur de Trétorrent's, but certainly it was not far behind it. This little concert given by Madame de Warrens, the new convert, who lived, it was expressed, on the king's charity, made the whole tribe of devotees murmur; but it was a very agreeable amusement to several worthy people, at the head of whom it would not be easily surmised that I should place a monk. Yet, though a monk, a man of considerable merit, and even of a very amiable disposition, whose subsequent misfortunes gave me the most lively concern, and whose idea, attached to that of my happy days, is yet dear to my memory. I speak of Father Caton, a Cordelier, who, in conjunction with the Comte d'Ortan, had caused the music of poor Le Maitre to be seized at Lyons, which action was far from being the brightest trait in his history. He was a bachelor of Sorbonne, had lived long in Paris among the great world, and was particularly caressed by the Marquis d'Entremont, then ambassador from Sardinia. He was tall and well made, full-faced, with very fine eyes, and black hair which formed natural curls on each side of his forehead. His manner was at once noble, open, and modest. He presented himself with ease and good manners, having neither the hypocritical nor impudent behavior of a monk, nor the forward assurance of a fashionable coxcomb, but the manners of a well-bred man, who, without blushing for his habit, set a value on himself, and ever felt in his proper situation when in good company. Though Father Caton was not deeply studied for a doctor, he was much so for a man of the world, and not being compelled to show his talents, he brought them forward so advantageously that they appeared greater than they really were. Having lived much in the world, he had rather attached himself to agreeable acquirements than to solid learning, had sense, made verses, spoke well, sang better, and aided his good voice by playing on the organ and harpsichord. So many pleasing qualities were not necessary to make his company sought after, and accordingly it was very much so. but this did not make him neglect the duties of his function. He was chosen, in spite of his jealous competitors, definitor of his province, or, according to them, one of the greatest pillars of their order. Father Caton became acquainted with Madame de Warrens at the Marquis d'Entremont's. He had heard of her concerts, wished to assist at them, and by his company rendered our meetings truly agreeable. We were soon attached to each other by our mutual taste for music, which in both was a most lively passion, with this difference, that he was really a musician, and myself a bungler. Sometimes, assisted by Canava and the Abbe Palais, we had music in his apartment, or on holidays at his organ, and frequently dined with him. For what was very astonishing in a monk, he was generous, profuse, and loved good cheer, without the least tincture of greediness. After our concerts, he always used to stay to supper, and these evenings passed with the greatest gaiety and good humor. We conversed with the utmost freedom, and sang duets. I was perfectly at my ease, had sallies of wit and merriment. Father Caton was charming, Madame de Warrens adorable, and the Abbe Palais, with his rough voice, was the butt of the company. Pleasing moments of sportive youth, how long since have ye fled? As I shall have no more occasion to speak of poor Father Caton, I will here conclude in a few words his melancholy history. His brother monks, jealous, or rather exasperated to discover in him a merit and elegance of manners, which favored nothing of monastic stupidity, conceived the most violent hatred to him, because he was not as despicable as themselves. The chiefs, therefore, combined against this worthy man, and set on the envious rabble of monks, who otherwise would not have dared to hazard the attack. He received 1,000 indignities. They degraded him from his office, took away the apartment which he had furnished with elegant simplicity, and at length banished him, I know not whither. In short, these wretches overwhelmed him with so many evils, that his honest and proud soul sank under the pressure. And after having been the delight of the most amiable societies, he died of grief, on a wretched bed, hid in some cell or dungeon, lamented by all worthy people of his acquaintance, who could find no fault in him, except his being a monk. Accustomed to this manner of life for some time, I became so entirely attached to music that I could think of nothing else. I went to my business with disgust. The necessary confinement and assiduity appeared an insupportable punishment, which I at length wished to relinquish, that I might give myself up without reserve to my favorite amusement. It will be readily believed that this folly met with some opposition. To give up a creditable employment and fixed salary to run after uncertain scholars was too giddy a plan to be approved of by Madame de Warrens. And even supposing my future success should prove as great as I flattered myself, It was fixing very humble limits to my ambition to think of reducing myself for life to the condition of a music master. She, who formed for me the brightest projects, and no longer trusted implicitly to the judgment of M. d'Aubonne, seeing with concern that I was so seriously occupied with a talent which she thought frivolous, frequently repeated to me that provincial proverb which does not hold quite so good in Paris: Qui bien chante et bien danse fait un métier qui peu avance. He who can sweetly sing and featly dance, his interests right little shall advance. On the other hand, she saw me hurried away by this irresistible passion, my taste for music having become a furore, and it was much to be feared that my employment, suffering by my distraction, might draw on me a discharge, which would be worse than a voluntary resignation. I represented to her that this employment could not last long, that it was necessary I should have some permanent means of subsistence, and that it would be much better to complete by practice the acquisition of that art to which my inclination led me, than to make fresh essays which possibly might not succeed, since by this means, having passed the age most proper for improvement, I might be left without a single resource for gaining a livelihood. In short, I extorted her consent more by importunity and caresses than by any satisfactory reasons. Proud of my success, I immediately ran to thank M. Coccelli, Director General of the Survey, as though I had performed the most heroic action, and quitted my employment without cause, reason, or pretext, with as much pleasure as I had accepted it 2 years before. This step, ridiculous as it may appear, procured me a kind of consideration which I found extremely useful. Some supposed I had resources which I did not possess; others, seeing me totally given up to music, judged of my abilities by the sacrifice I had made, and concluded that with such a passion for the art I must possess it in a superior degree. In a nation of blind men, those with one eye are kings. I passed here for an excellent master, because all the rest were very bad ones. Possessing taste in singing, and being favored by my age and figure, I soon procured more scholars than were sufficient to compensate for the losses of my secretary's pay. It is certain that had it been reasonable to consider the pleasure of my situation only, it was impossible to pass more speedily from one extreme to the other. At our measuring, I was confined 8 hours in the day to the most unentertaining employment, with yet more disagreeable company, shut up in a melancholy counting house, empoisoned by the smell and respiration of a number of clowns, the major part of whom were ill combed and very dirty. What with attention, bad air, constraint, and weariness, I was sometimes so far overcome as to occasion a vertigo. Instead of this, behold me admitted into the fashionable world, sought after in the first houses, and everywhere received with an air of satisfaction. Amiable and gay young ladies awaiting my arrival, and welcoming me with pleasure. I see nothing but charming objects, smell nothing but roses and orange flowers. Singing, chatting, laughter, and amusements perpetually succeed each other. It must be allowed that, reckoning all these advantages, no hesitation was necessary in the choice. In fact, I was so content with mine that I never once repented it, nor do I even now, when, free from the irrational motives that influenced me at that time, I weigh in the scale of reason every action of my life. End of section 3. Recording by Martin Geeson in Hazelmere, Surrey.